Joel wiped the sweat and grease off his forehead with the sleeve of his already stained jumpsuit, squinting at the blinking console that refused to cooperate. "Come on, Theta-9," he muttered. "You're supposed to be the galaxy's last line of defense against spaceship catastrophes, not a glorified junkyard." His voice echoed through the dome-shaped repair bay, which smelled faintly of burnt circuits and desperation. A sudden metallic screech outside made him jump. He grabbed his multi-tool, part wrench, part sarcasm dispenser, and shuffled to the entrance. The sandstorm howled like a banshee with a bad attitude, but through the swirling dust he could just make out the sleek silhouette of a ship that definitely didn't belong here. The hull gleamed even through the grime, with markings that looked less like decals and more like ancient runes from a cosmic spellbook. Joel rubbed his eyes. "Yeah, right. Maybe I'm hallucinating because of all this recycled air." The ship groaned again, settling on the cracked red soil like it had been dropped by an angry god. The hatch hissed open, and out stepped a woman who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, except for the long, delicate ears that poked out from beneath her black hair. She paused, scanning the battered outpost with a mix of curiosity and exhaustion, her eyes glowing faintly like twin stars caught in twilight. Joel blinked. "You lost? Or just really bad at choosing vacation spots?" She said nothing. Instead, she collapsed like a deflating balloon right in front of him. Joel's first instinct was to call for help, but with no one else around except the cleaning bots that were currently arguing over who had the better algorithm, he sighed. "Well, you picked the wrong mechanic for this job, but lucky you, I'm great with broken things." He hauled her into the bay, trying not to trip over the pile of discarded circuit boards and coffee cups that threatened to turn the place into a landfill. As he set her gently on a cot, she stirred, eyes flickering open like distant galaxies waking from a long sleep. "Name's Joel," he said, sitting down beside her. "I fix ships, and sometimes, apparently, I fix stranded royalty. You got a name, or should I just call you Queen of Mysterious Trouble?" A faint smile touched her lips. "Ceressa," she whispered, voice soft but resolute. "Queen of Virelia." Joel choked on an imaginary sip of coffee. "Queen? You're joking, right? Because last I checked, this place isn't exactly the palace of intergalactic diplomacy." Ceressa sat up slowly, regal despite the dust and the obvious discomfort. "I am no joke. My ship malfunctioned near your sector, and I needed help." Joel scratched his head. "Right. So you're telling me the universe's most powerful ruler crashed her ride on a sandball nobody cares about, and the best mechanic available is me?" "That appears to be the case." Joel laughed, a dry sound that seemed to lift some invisible weight from the room. "Well, Your Majesty, I gotta say, you've got lousy luck. But lucky for you, I've got a knack for miracles and duct tape." The days that followed were a blur of sparks, awkward silences, and Ceressa's pointed remarks about the primitive state of Joel's tools. Joel countered by teaching her the art of human stubbornness, mostly by refusing to let the power converters explode, despite the fact they smelled like a burnt toaster. One evening, as Joel was hunched over the ship's damaged hull, a small cleaning bot rolled up and beeped insistently. Joel squinted at the blinking red light on its chest. "Not now. I'm in the middle of a cosmic puzzle here." Ceressa glanced at the bot, raising an eyebrow. "They seem persistent." Joel grinned. "Yeah, they're the religious fanatics of the outpost. Worship the vending machine over there. I swear if one tries to convert me to the Church of Soda again, I'm tossing it into the sandstorm." Ceressa laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. "You humans have peculiar ways of worship." Joel winked. "That's what makes us charming." As the storm outside raged and the stars blinked cold and indifferent above, a fragile alliance formed between the stranded queen and the unlikely mechanic. Neither knew that this simple act of kindness, fixing a broken ship, would soon pull them into a cosmic drama filled with secrets, alliances, and enough plot twists to make a supernova jealous. But for now, Joel tightened the last bolt, wiped his hands, and looked up at Ceressa with a smirk. "Ready to fly, or should we just stay here and start a cult with those bots?" She smiled, the faint glow in her eyes matching the starry sky. "Let's fly. But Joel, thank you." He shrugged, grinning. Hey, what are heroes for if not to fix other people's messes? And with that, the hum of the repaired ship filled the bay, the first note in a symphony that would echo across galaxies. Joel rubbed the back of his neck as he stared at the ship's console, the blinking lights now a soothing, steady green instead of the frantic red flashes from yesterday. Well, Your Highness, he said, not bothering to hide the teasing grin, looks like your fancy ship is almost ready for liftoff, and I only nearly electrocuted myself 3 times. Saressa raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. Only 3? I'm impressed by your survival rate, human. Joel gave a mock bow. Thank you, thank you. Years of dodging bad wiring and worse coffee have prepared me well. She studied him quietly for a moment, then glanced down at the oil stains on his jumpsuit. You don't look like a typical intergalactic technician. Joel laughed. Yeah, well, I'm not your typical anything. Mostly just a guy who can fix things when they break, and try not to swear too much. Is that why you have so many tools that look more like kitchen utensils? Saressa pointed to the dented spanner in his hand. Joel held it up proudly. Ah, the multi-spanner. It doubles as a pizza cutter and opens bottles. Very handy in emergencies. Saressa smiled, a rare lightness in her eyes. I think I could learn a lot from you, Joel. Joel scratched his chin. Funny thing about that, I'm learning a thing or two from you as well, like how to not take life too seriously even when your ship might explode. Before either could say more, the ship's comm crackled with static, then a voice as cold and clipped as a frozen nebula came through. Varelian vessel, identify yourself immediately. This is the galactic diplomatic probe Omega-17. You are in restricted space. Joel leaned closer, whispering, well, that sounds about as friendly as a hyperspace traffic cop on their 3rd cup of bad synth coffee. Saressa straightened, her expression hardening. Ignore it. I will handle this. Joel's eyes widened. Handle this how? Like, talk it down? Or, I don't know, reprogram their AI with a cat video? Saressa's lips twitched into something suspiciously close to a grin. Not quite, but close. The probe's voice crackled again. This is an official request for your identification and purpose. Failure to comply will result in interception and inspection. Joel rolled his eyes. Sounds like someone just discovered the joy of bureaucracy. Saressa glanced at him, then back at the console. They believe I have been kidnapped. If they discover I'm here, it could trigger a political incident. Joel blinked. Kidnapped? You? Seriously? Saressa's eyes darkened. Not the first time, and probably not the last. Joel shook his head, already plotting. Okay, plan 1. Convince the probe you're just some lost traveler with a bad sense of direction. Plan 2. If that fails, unplug their antenna and blame it on space rodents. Saressa laughed outright this time. Space rodents? Joel nodded solemnly. Don't ask. The probe's scanners intensified, and the ship began to shake as automated drones closed in. Joel grabbed a spare circuit board and, with a flourish, jammed it into the console. Here goes nothing. The probe's voice became confused. System malfunction detected. Recalibrating. Joel grinned. See? Works every time. Saressa shook her head but smiled. You may just be the most absurd ally I've ever had. As the probe's drones retreated, Joel slumped back in his chair. I swear, if that thing starts playing operatic music, I'm out. Saressa looked at him with something like affection. You have no idea what's coming. Joel groaned. Great. More surprises. Just what I needed. But as the stars wheeled overhead and the repaired ship hummed softly beneath their feet, Joel realized that life with Saressa, queen, mystery, and occasional dictator of his peace of mind, was going to be anything but ordinary. The moment the galactic diplomatic probe Omega-17 vanished into the swirling dust of the red moon's atmosphere, Joel let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Well, that was almost fun, by which I mean, let's never do that again. Saressa gave a tight smile. They will not forget so easily. If they trace this ship, the entire empire will know I am here. We must be cautious. Joel's fingers itched to tinker, but the ship's sensors were still twitching nervously. Cautious, huh? Like how you hid in the ventilation ducts back there. You've got to teach me that move sometime. Very dramatic. Saressa's eyes gleamed with amused disbelief. I didn't expect to become an expert in hide and seek during my reign, but here we are. Only thing missing was the soundtrack. I was half expecting a spotlight to follow you around. She laughed softly. You find humor in the strangest moments. Joel shrugged. It's how I survive. That and pretending the universe is a giant joke, and I'm the punchline. The ship's comm buzzed again, a low, ominous thrum that sent shivers down Joel's spine. Incoming transmission, the console announced in a robotic monotone. Joel glanced at Saressa. Ready for round 2 of Let's Confuse the Galactic Police? Saressa shook her head. No, this is from the Empire itself. Joel's eyes narrowed. Empire, as in the people who probably want you back on the throne or dead. The transmission flickered on, revealing a holographic figure clad in the gleaming regalia of Virelia's high command. Queen Saressa, the figure intoned, your unauthorized departure and the breach of Imperial protocol endanger the stability of the Empire. You are ordered to return immediately. Joel muttered, yeah, and I'm ordered to stop fixing ships and take up knitting. Saressa's expression hardened. They do not understand the necessity of my absence. There are threats within the palace walls. I require your aid, Joel. Joel blinked. My aid? Me. What do I look like? A cosmic secret agent? More than that, she said seriously. You have repaired more than my ship. You have mended my trust in humanity. Joel cleared his throat, suddenly very aware of his grease-stained jumpsuit and the smell of burnt circuitry clinging to him. Well, that's a heavy compliment for a guy whose greatest skill is not electrocuting himself. Saressa's smile was genuine. Sometimes simple skills are the most valuable. Before Joel could respond, alarms blared through the ship. Red lights flashed as the emergency beacon activated, broadcasting their location to any nearby Imperial forces. Joel yelped, well, that's not ideal. Saressa hurried to the controls. They are coming. We must prepare. Joel grabbed his multi-tool. You know, in every spy movie, there's a moment where the hero cracks a joke while dodging laser fire. I'm banking on that. Saressa raised an eyebrow. I am not certain your jokes will save us. Hey, humor's the best shield. Also, it confuses the enemy. Works every time. As the ship's sensors picked up multiple incoming vessels closing fast, Joel and Saressa shared a determined glance. Ready for a little cosmic dance? Joel asked. Always, Saressa replied. The first laser blast streaked past, narrowly missing their ship. Joel flipped switches, rerouted power, and muttered, Okay, no pressure. Just don't explode. Saressa's fingers flew over the controls, activating defensive shields that shimmered like liquid glass. Your mechanics are impressive, Joel. This ship is more resilient than I feared. Joel grinned. Yeah, well, it's all duct tape and prayers. The pursuers intensified their assault, but the ship's countermeasures worked flawlessly. Joel managed to hack one of the enemy drones, turning it into a distraction that crashed spectacularly into a nearby asteroid. Boom! One less headache. Saressa laughed despite the chaos. You truly are extraordinary. Joel shrugged. I try, mostly to avoid becoming cosmic space dust. As the battle raged, the two found themselves working in perfect sync. The Queen with her commanding presence and a tactical brilliance, the mechanic with his quick thinking and irreverent humor. Together, they navigated the dangerous political currents and literal laser fire that threatened to end their mission before it truly began. When the last pursuer broke off the chase, Joel exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. Well, that was intense. Think we could settle for a quiet corner of the galaxy next time? Saressa smiled, the warmth in her eyes unmistakable. Quiet is a luxury few in my position enjoy. Joel smirked. Yeah, but a guy can dream. Until then, I'm your mechanic, your partner in cosmic chaos, and your official supplier of bad jokes. Saressa's laughter filled the cockpit. Then we have much to learn from each other. Joel looked out at the stars, now calm and indifferent once more. Somewhere out there, the Empire was plotting their next move, and the galaxy awaited a story far stranger than either of them could have imagined. But for now, they had each other, a repaired ship, and a universe full of possibilities. Joel tapped the cracked screen of the ship's navigation panel, which flickered more than it should. So, when you say secure location, do you mean somewhere with less sandstorms and more coffee? Because I'm running low on both. Ceresa's eyes narrowed in thoughtful silence. The planet Callus 9. It is remote, uninhabited by the Empire, and shielded by a dense nebula. Perfect for concealment. Joel rubbed his chin. Sounds like a great place for a vacation, except for the part where no one's there to serve drinks. Ceresa gave a faint smile. We do not vacation, Joel. We survive. He grinned. Survival with style, then. Maybe I can teach you a few things about human stubbornness. It's like a secret weapon. As the ship glided through the glittering nebula, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. Instead, it was filled with a growing understanding that transcended words. Joel fiddled with a small gadget, its blinking lights reflecting in Ceresa's calm eyes. So, Joel began, breaking the quiet, what's the deal with your ears? Long, elegant, kind of like a cosmic elf. Ever thought about starting a fashion trend? Ceresa's lips quirked upwards. They are a symbol of my people's heritage and status. Joel chuckled. Heritage, status, and great for hearing gossip from across the room, I bet. She laughed softly. And you, Joel? What makes you who you are? Joel paused, considering. I guess it's the stuff that doesn't break easily, like this ship. Or maybe it's just luck, mixed with a lot of stubbornness and bad jokes. Ceresa shook her head, amused. You have a unique philosophy. Joel shrugged. It keeps me out of trouble most of the time. When it doesn't, well, that's when things get interesting. Suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped urgently. Incoming transmission, the console announced. Joel sighed. Not again. Can a guy catch a break around here? The hologram flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced man in a uniform that screamed, Empire High Command. Queen Ceresa, this is Commander Rael. We have traced your signal. Surrender now to avoid further conflict. Joel raised an eyebrow. Commander Rael, huh? Sounds like someone who never laughs. Ceresa's voice was steady. Commander, this is not a battle I wish to fight. I seek only to protect my people and find the traitor within the Empire. Joel grinned. Traitor? Now that sounds like a party. Mind if I crash it? Rael's expression darkened. Your interference will be met with force. This is your final warning. Joel turned to Ceresa. Looks like we're invited to a very unfriendly reunion. Ready to crash some Imperial parties? Ceresa nodded. Always. Joel adjusted his tool belt, the weight of responsibility mixing with an odd thrill. You know, for a queen, you sure get into the worst situations. But hey, if anyone can fix a cosmic mess, it's us. As the ship surged forward, weaving through asteroid fields and electronic countermeasures, Joel and Ceresa prepared for a confrontation that would test their trust, their skills, and the fragile bond forming between mechanic and queen. The stars outside might have been cold and indifferent, but inside that small cockpit, a new alliance was forging, one that could change the fate of a galaxy. Joel blinked at the blinking console, then at the holographic projection of the sprawling Imperial Council chamber floating before him. Well, this is a step up from the usual greasy repair bay, he muttered, adjusting the grease smudge on his jumpsuit like a bad fashion statement. I mean, who knew fixing a spaceship would land me in interstellar politics? Ceresa's long ears twitched slightly, betraying a flicker of amusement. You underestimate your importance, Joel. Without you, I would never have escaped to stand before the council. You are not merely a mechanic, you are the catalyst for change. Joel smiled, but inside, a knot of nerves twisted. Standing beside a queen in front of the galaxy's most powerful rulers was hardly the sort of thing he'd expected when he woke up that morning. Then again, he rarely expected anything normal. The council's grand chamber hummed with tension as Ceresa began her address. Esteemed members, my departure was not rebellion, but necessity. There are traitors within our ranks, those who seek to destabilize the Empire from within. I have returned to root them out with the help of an unexpected ally. She gestured toward Joel, whose grin widened despite himself. A murmur rippled through the assembly, a mixture of surprise and skepticism. One grizzled senator leaned forward. An outsider? A mere mechanic? Aiding the queen? Preposterous, Joel shrugged. I'm just a guy who fixes what's broken. Sometimes that means ships, sometimes trust. I'm good at both. Another voice piped up, a sharp-edged diplomat with eyes like cold steel. And what proof do you have of this alleged treachery? Saressa produced a data crystal, flicking it to life. Images, conversations, and encrypted messages revealed a conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of the empire. The council members shifted uneasily. Joel leaned toward Saressa, whispering, "Looks like your empire has worse office politics than my old mechanic shop." She smiled. Perhaps we are not so different after all. The debate that followed was fierce, yet the undeniable evidence and Saressa's unwavering resolve turned the tide. Those loyal to the empire's ideals began to rally behind her once more. When the session ended, Joel and Saressa found themselves alone on the balcony overlooking the sprawling cityscape of the capital planet. The stars above twinkled with distant promise. "You changed everything," Saressa said quietly. "Not just by fixing my ship, but by reminding me that trust and courage come in many forms." Joel laughed softly. Who knew a scruffy mechanic could become a queen's unlikely hero? I guess sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Hero? I guess sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Saressa's eyes held a new warmth. And I have learned that even a queen needs someone to remind her to laugh. Joel looked out at the horizon, feeling the weight of everything behind him and the endless possibilities ahead. So, what now? Save the galaxy? Or maybe just find a decent cup of coffee? She chuckled. Both sound equally challenging. But with you by my side, I believe anything is possible. Joel grinned. Well then, Your Majesty, let's get to work. And as the twin moons rose, casting silver light over the city, a mechanic and a queen set forth, not just as saviors of an empire, but as partners bound by trust, laughter, and the unlikeliest of friendships that could perhaps change the stars themselves. She stood at the edge of the command deck, arms folded across her armored chest, gaze fixed on the distorted swirl of stars beyond the view glass. The light of a dying red sun painted the floor in bruised crimson, but Talira Vale didn't blink. 100 worlds had burned beneath her command. 1,000 sons and daughters of enemy lineages had fallen to the blades she wore now, clipped casually to her side like an afterthought. Her long ears twitched at the whispering reports behind her, the petty details of fleet maneuvers and minor skirmishes. None of it mattered. Not today. "Commander," said the voice behind her. Young, nervous, probably a new comms officer trying not to soil his regulation boots. The Terran envoy has arrived. He's requesting permission to board." She turned slowly. The young officer flinched like a door had opened to vacuum. Talira regarded him with the dispassionate curiosity one might give to a creature found under a rock. "The Terran envoy," she said, tasting the words. "The one the Council insisted we accommodate, despite the fact that his species still uses combustion engines to leave their atmosphere?" "Yes, Commander, Elias Rohn. He brought a duffel bag. He refused standard transport. He says he prefers to travel light, like my career prospects." There was a long silence. "Bring him up," she said finally, with the same tone one might use when authorizing the controlled detonation of an unexploded warhead. Elias Rohn entered the command deck like he'd taken a wrong turn into a costume party. His jacket was brown, patched, and possibly older than the star system. His boots were mismatched. He walked like he was counting steps for a personal challenge. And when he reached Talira, he smiled. Not a cautious, respectful smile, but a full, audacious grin like he was seeing an old friend or about to pitch a tent in her personal dignity. "You must be Talira," he said, voice warm and infuriatingly casual. "Or do you prefer Commander Doomstare? I've heard both. Big fan, either way." Talira stared at him, not because she didn't know what to say, but because she couldn't believe this. Being was meant to represent a species that had once sent a probe to interstellar space with a golden record of whale sounds and Chuck Berry. Her ears twitched. "You are not wearing your diplomatic insignia," she said. "Oh, that? I used it to bribe a dockhand. He said it made a great bottle opener." He paused. "Do you want it back? He's very reasonable." She blinked once, twice. What are you here to achieve, Mr. Roan? Mostly to not die. But if time permits, I'd love to prevent a war or two. Maybe squeeze in a nap. He should have been vaporized. That was the sensible response. It would have sent the right message. That the dominion of Vial did not entertain fools. But instead she found herself, unaccountably, unreasonably, amused. Just a flicker. Just a shadow of laughter curled up in the edges of her ribs like a ticklish parasite. She banished it with a scowl. You are here because the Council believes humans may offer insight into negotiation strategies. She gestured sharply, and a holographic map flared to life in the center of the command deck. Star systems lit up like wound points across a galaxy's skin. We are on the brink of war with the Sarathian Clade. You will observe, you will report, and you will not interfere. Elias peered at the map, scratching his chin. That one looks like a duck, he said, pointing at a spiral galaxy. You see it? Head, wings, little galactic butt. Mr. Roan. Right, yes. Observing, reporting. Not interfering. Scout's honor. Were you a scout? Number Y was disqualified for inappropriate marshmallow use. The silence that followed was so absolute it could have been bottled and sold as a vacuum sealant. Talira exhaled very slowly. You will be assigned quarters. Do not touch anything. No promises. And do not speak to the engineering crew. They are prone to violence and interpret sarcasm as a mating call. I've made that mistake before, he said. It involved a very large woman and a very small escape pod. By the time he was led away by two silently horrified security officers, the command deck was in stunned stasis. One officer began to whisper a prayer to the star gods. Another gently banged his head against the console. Is he insane? Someone whispered. No, Talira said, turning back to the view glass. He is human. That night, in the quarters assigned to her by rank, Talira sat in silence, her armor peeled off and propped beside her like an empty exoskeleton. She stared at her reflection in the black surface of a powered-down monitor. She could not remember the last time someone had spoken to her as if she were not above them, not apart. It was irrelevant, of course, fleeting, like flare gas in a dead engine. Still, when the door chimed and a crewman brought her a datapad with the Terran's full file, she took it without a word and scanned it long into the night. Decorated once, then court-martialed, survived 3 orbital falls, smuggled out prisoners from a Sarathian siege using a garbage barge and a fake beard, conducted unauthorized stand-up comedy on a ship-wide channel during a blackout crisis. Human. The next morning, she was already dressed when the alert sounded. A conflict flare had triggered on the edge of Krelos Minor. The Sarathians were testing territory lines again. She arrived on the command deck to find Elias already there, sipping what might have once been coffee from a metal canteen labeled "Emergency Only." Morning, sunshine, he said brightly. I heard we might be getting shot at. Thought I'd offer my moral support. Also, your comms officer locked me out of the snack dispenser. She stared at him. Look, he said, raising his hands. If you want me to leave, just say the word. I'm very good at being inconvenient elsewhere. There it was again. The flicker. That laugh-shaped parasite. It wriggled in her chest. Mr. Roan, she said coolly, if you die, I will be required to fill out 8 forms and submit blood samples to 2 separate jurisdictions. Well, now I feel cherished. You are not cherished. You are a paperwork hazard. He winked. Best compliment I've had in weeks. The ship turned toward the flare zone. Outside, the stars spun like teeth. War waited. She didn't know why she let him stay on the bridge, or why she didn't report him for insubordination, or why she found herself watching the human instead of the danger. Perhaps because, in a galaxy of silence and fire, someone had finally dared to speak without fear and laugh at her. And perhaps that laughter had cut deeper than any blade. The drop shuttle rattled like a tin can kicked down a stairwell, though the ship's auto-stabilizers insisted that everything was operating within acceptable turbulence thresholds. Talira wasn't convinced. Neither was Elias, who had wedged himself between 2 supply crates and was clutching a safety harness that might once have been attached to something useful. Does this thing usually make that sound? He asked, raising his voice over the wailing groan of stressed alloy. Talira didn't glance up from the tactical feed projected onto her wrist. Yes, you didn't ask which sound I meant. I don't need to. All of them are normal, unfortunately. He shifted and grunted as the shuttle banked sharply, flinging him into a crate labeled rations, not suitable for humans. You know, he said, picking himself up. On Earth, we used to have a thing called a chair. It was revolutionary. People sat on them to prevent this exact situation. You are not required to accompany the mission, she said without looking at him. And miss all the fun? Not a chance. Besides, I've already committed to this helmet hair. Might as well get some battle scars to match. They were descending toward the surface of Krelos Minor, a moon that had never quite made up its mind about being habitable. It was mostly dust, storms, and regret, with the occasional outpost that clung to the crust like a stubborn fungus. A distress signal had been sent from Research Station 9, short, garbled, and followed by silence. The kind of silence that usually ended with someone identifying bodies by DNA vapor residue. As the shuttle pierced the atmosphere, visibility dropped to 0 in the crimson dust clouds. The pilot, a twitchy synth called Vok, whistled a jaunty tune that was, according to flight logs, associated with pre-crash impact anticipation. I swear, Elias muttered, if we die here, I'm haunting the person who installed this seat. You are sitting on a crate of thermal explosives. Well, then I guess I'll be haunting a lot of people. The landing was less a touchdown and more a skidding controlled panic event. When the hatch finally hissed open, the wind outside screamed like it was offended by their presence. Talira stepped out first, visor down, boots crunching into pale red grit. Elias followed, adjusting his scarf and immediately getting a mouthful of dust. Delicious, he coughed. Tastes like old socks and disappointment. They made their way toward the main compound. The buildings were low and wide, half buried in sand, with corrosion chewing at their corners. The lights flickered under a thin emergency power hum, casting twitchy shadows across the ground. The entrance was open. That was the first bad sign. Inside it was quiet. Too quiet. Not the silence of absence, but the tight, unnatural hush of held breath. Talira signaled a halt. Her ears twitched once, twice. Elias stood beside her, hand near the sidearm that was technically registered as non-lethal, but had a tendency to vaporize anything it considered rude. They moved through the corridors. The lab equipment was smashed, terminals cracked, data cores torn out with surgical violence. No blood, no bodies, just the echo of something gone terribly wrong. Well, Elias whispered, on the bright side, no one's arguing over lunch options. Stay alert, she murmured. I was about to say the same to you, came a voice. Talira turned, blade half drawn, as a figure emerged from the shadows. Sarathion armor, scorched but intact. Blue skin, high-ridged spine. Enemy. Elias lifted his weapon, but the alien raised empty hands. Easy, he said. I'm not here to fight. That's convenient, Elias said, because I'm not here to shoot people who surrender with decent posture. The Sarathion gave him a long look. You're the human, the joke. Better than being a cliché, Elias replied, not moving his weapon. What happened here? Sabotage, the alien said, grim. A sleeper agent, one of ours, turned on both sides, took the data, triggered the defense drones, left us all for dead. Why survive? Talira asked, voice sharp as her blade. Because I hid under a collapsed wall and pretended to be unconscious, he said without shame. Survival is not always glorious. Talira didn't lower her weapon. Why tell us this? Because your council will blame the humans, or the clade, whoever benefits more. But it wasn't us, and it wasn't you. It was someone else. That narrows it down to approximately 70 billion suspects, Elias muttered. The Sarathion smirked. The traitor broadcast a fragment of their next destination before the signal cut. A moon called Relkar 5. You'll want to get there before your council does. Why? Talira asked. Because they'll bury the truth, and you'll bury him. Elias looked at Talira. Well, this mission just got an upgrade from scenic moon hike to galactic conspiracy thriller. Think we get hazard pay? She ignored him. Her mind raced, calculating trajectories, political fallout, command structures. She was supposed to report this, let the brass handle it. But she already knew how they would spin it. The truth wasn't useful, The truth was dangerous. She nodded once. We go to Relcar 5. Fantastic, Elias said. Do we at least get to stop for snacks on the way? Outside, the wind had died, the dust had settled, but the air was heavier now, as if the moon itself knew something terrible had started, and that the worst part was how much worse it could still get. Talira walked ahead, not noticing that Elias lingered a second longer at the door. Hey, he said to the wind, just so we're clear, if I get killed saving an alien princess or whatever, somebody better build me a statue, or at least a really sarcastic plaque. He caught up to her. She didn't look back, but her ears twitched. That statue, she said, will be holding a mop. Because I cleaned up the mess? Number because it will be cleaning up you. He grinned. I accept this fate. The cargo hold of the Valian long-range interceptor was not designed for comfort. It was designed for resilience, redundancy, and, based on Elias's current position, crammed between a crate of cryo grenades and a loose food dispenser, mild spinal damage. You know, he said, shifting with a wince, in some cultures, this would be considered a form of therapy. Your discomfort is not a priority, Talira replied without looking up from the navigation display. I can tell. The seating here says, welcome to your regret. Talira made a subtle gesture, and the internal lights dimmed to combat readiness. The ship hummed under their feet as it approached Relcar 5, a fractured moon orbiting a dead planet. The records described the surface as unstable, the atmosphere as barely breathable, and the native wildlife as inappropriately enthusiastic. They descended in silence. Outside, the stars retreated behind waves of magnetized dust. The shuttle's scanners chirped constantly in protest, detecting phantom signals and echo pings that never resolved into anything coherent. Elias watched Talira work. Fluid movements, efficient, precise. Her long ears twitched occasionally, as if tuning to some frequency no human could detect. He wondered, not for the first time, what had made someone like her pick up a sword instead of a crown, a command instead of a quiet life. So, he said, any chance we're here to rescue puppies and not stumble into a death trap? If there are puppies, they will likely have exoskeletons and acidic drool. Lovely, I'll pack biscuits. The ship touched down on an uneven plateau just outside the abandoned mining colony. Relcar 5 had once been stripped for its mineral-rich crust until the tectonics began shifting unpredictably. The corporations pulled out. The people who stayed either died or got very good at running. They emerged into thin, icy air. A thin purple fog hugged the ground, reacting oddly to their footsteps, rippling like liquid light. Is it supposed to do that? Elias asked, poking it with a metal rod he'd found. No, Talira said, stepping around the fog, which means we should be cautious. Right, definitely not poking it again. He immediately poked it again. Science. The colony loomed in silence. The buildings were low to the ground, reinforced against tremors, now half collapsed or swallowed by erosion. The entrance gates opened at their approach, as if expecting them. Either someone's still home, Elias muttered, or this place has developed hospitality settings. Stay close, Talira said. Do I have a choice? Number. But it is polite to pretend. Inside the facility, the lights were dim, flickering with the unreliable rhythm of failing power cells. The walls bore signs of recent use: scorch marks, makeshift barricades, graffiti in at least 3 languages Elias didn't recognize. They found the first sign of life in what had once been a data archive. A Sarathian, young, panicked, leapt from behind a server bank, wielding a plasma blade with the confidence of someone who'd never used one in real combat. Talira disarmed him before he finished his first word. Elias caught the blade before it hit the ground. Whoa, friendly, very friendly, mostly friendly. The Sarathian blinked up at them from the floor. I thought you were scavengers. Nope, Elias said. We're something much worse. Bureaucrats. Talira crouched beside the fallen alien. Why are you here? I followed a signal. The traitor who took the data from Krelos. They were broadcasting here. Why? I don't know, but the signal, it's still active. Below, in the tunnels. Talira stood. You'll guide us. What if I say no? You won't? Elias patted the Seratheon on the shoulder. It's okay. She only threatens people she likes. That is incorrect, Talira said. You're not helping your brand. They descended into the lower tunnels. The light grew fainter, the air thick with pressure and strange electrical static. The deeper they went, the more the metal walls gave way to carved stone and long-abandoned tech. Hybrid systems of unknown origin, overgrown with cables that pulsed like veins. Either this place used to be part of something important, Elias muttered, or someone built an evil lair and didn't finish decorating. The Seratheon guide stopped at a junction. It's through here, but the door opened by itself. Inside was a chamber unlike the rest, clean, active. A core pulsed at the center, a sphere of light suspended in a gravitic field. Around it, consoles flickered to life as they entered, displaying unreadable glyphs and fractal diagrams. Talira stepped forward. This is not Seratheon. This is older. Pre-diaspora? Elias asked. Worse, she murmured. Pre-silence. The Seratheon backed away. I don't like this. Good, Elias said. If you did, I'd be worried. A figure emerged from behind the core. Tall, thin, face masked. Their voice was mechanical, filtered through multiple layers of distortion. You came. I was wondering how long it would take. Talira drew her blade. Identify yourself. I am what your leaders fear. A bridge, a crack in the wall, and I carry truth too dangerous for the council to let survive. Elias took a step forward. You're the traitor. Number I am the beginning of correction. The war between your people and the Clade is a curtain. Behind it, something much larger waits. Oh, good, Elias said. Cryptic nonsense. I love this part. The figure stepped aside. The core shimmered, revealing data. Histories erased from archives, maps of wormholes undiscovered by either empire, blueprints of technology that defied physics. This is why I took the data, the figure said, because your war is a distraction and someone needs to see beyond it. Talira studied the holograms. Her face was unreadable. You should have brought this to the council. They would have buried it, or me. Elias folded his arms. So your plan was, what? Upload secrets into an ancient computer and wait for guests? I knew someone would follow. I hoped they would be brave enough to choose truth over allegiance. Silence hung in the air. Then Elias said, Look, I'm not saying this isn't all very impressive and enlightening, but can we maybe not die in a mysterious moon chamber while decoding forgotten galactic prophecies? I skipped breakfast. The figure paused. You are not what I expected. Welcome to the club, Talira said. The ground shook. A tremor rolled through the floor, and warning lights flashed red. Great, Elias muttered. You activated the everyone leaves or explodes protocol. Talira grabbed the data core. We're leaving. Now. They ran as the tunnel behind them collapsed. The power flickered, alarms blared. The path to the surface crumbled in segments. They reached the upper level just as the facility began to cave in. Outside, the air was colder, sharper. The stars above seemed to pulse with new urgency. Back aboard the ship, Elias collapsed into a chair, gasping. I take back what I said. This moon does not have puppies. Talira studied the core in her hands. What we found will not be welcomed. Good, Elias said. If it was, I'd be even more suspicious. She looked at him for a long moment. You are an anomaly. Thank you. I work very hard at it. She didn't smile, but her ears twitched. And somehow, that was worse, because it meant she was considering something she hadn't dared before. Maybe the galaxy didn't need more silence. Maybe it needed more voices, even ones that came with sarcasm and a tendency to trip over diplomatic protocol. Maybe especially those. Elias leaned against the mess table, chewing on a ration bar that claimed to be beef-flavored, though by all available metrics had more in common with industrial sealant. Talira stood at the far end of the chamber, the stolen data core floating between them in a stasis field, pulsing softly with colors that didn't exist on any human spectrum. It was the kind of artifact that could unmake empires or, more likely, cause 5 subcommittees to spontaneously combust from paperwork overload. We can't take this to your council, Elias said around a bite that echoed like sandpaper inside his mouth. I know, she replied without looking at him, because they'll arrest us both. And by us, I mean mostly me, because technically, you outrank every species between here and the galactic rim. I said I know. He tossed the remainder of the bar into a nearby disposal unit, which rejected it with a mechanical gag. Just checking. I like to confirm that we're on the same page before the chase ships show up. Talia turned to him. There are no chase ships. Yet. Optimism. Dangerous. You're starting to sound like me. I am considering the consequences of treason. That's the spirit. They stared at the data core as if it might start reciting a more convenient truth. It didn't. It simply floated there, humming in a way that made Elias's teeth itch. He'd always hated secrets, and this one buzzed with a particular kind of menace, like it had grown fat on forgotten truths. He walked toward it, stopped just shy of the containment field. You sure this thing can't explode? No. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. There was a ping from the ship's comms console. Talia crossed the room and checked the signal, her posture tightening like a coiled spring. It's a Clade cruiser, unmarked, approaching its sublight. No official transmission. Elias blinked. How many ways can you say ambush in your language? There is one word. It translates roughly to the moment just before your last mistake. He snorted. Efficient. The cruiser matched their drift velocity, then sent a tight beam message. It wasn't text, audio, or visual. It was a thought, compressed, encrypted, and aimed directly at Talira's neural implant. She staggered. Elias caught her before she hit the floor. Hey, you okay? Please tell me your people don't have a tradition of spontaneous fainting during awkward social moments. She blinked once. It's an invitation. To brunch? To board? I liked brunch better. She stood, straightened, and grabbed her weapon. They know about the core. They want to talk. Friendly talk? They use the phrase non-lethal containment. Oh, that's the nice kind of kidnapping. They met the boarding party in the docking corridor. There were 3 of them, tall, clad in armor that shifted colors in unnatural ways, like a mood ring designed by someone with unresolved rage issues. The leader stepped forward, removed their helmet. She looked like Talia, same high cheekbones, long ears, eyes that burned like stars barely held back by gravity. Sister, the leader said. Elias blinked. Oh no, there's 2 of you? The commander ignored him. You have something that does not belong to you. Talira's jaw tightened. It belongs to no one. That is the point. The sister's smile was beautiful and dangerous. The council will not agree. The council doesn't see. They see well enough to order your return. You will come with us. Now. I won't. The corridor grew colder. Not literally, just the kind of quiet that always preceded regrettable decisions. Elias cleared his throat. Hi, I'm the human, the one she's allegedly betraying her people for. And I'd just like to say, in case this gets weird, that I'm very flattered, but mostly confused. The sister turned to him. You are the joke. That's what everyone keeps saying, and yet I'm still here. It's amazing, really. You don't belong in this. Believe me, I've tried getting out, but she's very persuasive and heavily armed. Talia stepped between them. He stays, and I won't be going anywhere. The sister's expression didn't change, but her armor did, shifting into something sleeker, sharper. Then you forced me to respond. Don't do this. Too late. The boarding corridor erupted in a flicker of kinetic shields and energy pulses. Talia moved like fire, a blur of blade in motion, her strikes aimed not to kill, but to disable. Elias ducked behind a bulkhead, yanked out his sidearm, and muttered, This is exactly why I hate family reunions. He fired twice, missed once, accidentally hit a control panel that vented a small maintenance bot into space. The bot expressed its displeasure in binary on the way out. The fight was short, brutal, and somehow elegant. Talia stood at the end, breathing hard, a line of blood, hers trailing down her arm. The sister was on one knee, her weapon gone. You've changed, she hissed. No, Talia said. I've remembered. They left the Clade soldiers locked in containment, uploaded a false drive trail to make it look like they'd fled in the opposite direction, and jumped to deep space. The stars stretched, then snapped back into a tunnel of dark silence. Elias was quiet for once. Talira looked at him. Say it. He shook his head. Nope. I'm too impressed to be sarcastic right now. Try harder. You beat up your sister to protect me. I feel like I should knit you a sweater or something. I do not wear soft garments. Then I'll get you a commemorative mug. Galactic trader with a heart of gold. Very collectible. She allowed herself the smallest twitch of a smile. Then after a long moment, we can't run forever. I'm not good at running. That's why I brought you. We need allies. Anyone who doesn't shoot at us the moment we say hello would be a nice start. We'll go to the fractured verge. The outlaws there still honor old debts. I've always wanted to be hunted across a pirate colony. Then you will love what comes next. He looked at the data core again. You sure this thing is worth it? Talira stared into the shimmer. If it isn't, we're risking everything for nothing. Then let's make sure it is. The ship banked into the void, its hull humming with defiance. Somewhere behind them, the galaxy was starting to whisper their names. Not with praise, but with fear. And maybe, if they were lucky, a little bit of awe. The fractured verge was not so much a location as it was an insult to navigational charts and the very idea of gravitational stability. The sector drifted through the debris of a shattered moon, cloaked in electromagnetic fog thick enough to deep fry the sensors of anything short of a god-tier dreadnought, which mercifully they were not flying. Elias took this as a rare win. Let me guess, he said, as the ship bucked through another current of erratic plasma winds. This place has no laws, no parking fees, and definitely no proper toilets. There are customs, Talira said, bracing herself against a bulkhead, but they are enforced exclusively by insult and retaliatory cannon fire. So, like my family reunions. Less formal, they docked with the outpost known as Bone Relay 7, 1,000 shattered hulls welded into a floating testament to bad decisions and worse engineering. The hangar manager greeted them with a double-barreled plasma wrench and a curious lack of personal hygiene. State your name, business, and emotional state, he grunted. Talira replied in a dialect so old it made the man blink twice and cross himself with his wrench. You're kidding, Elias whispered. Did you just say you were queen of the 13 spiral houses and holder of the sacred vault of Clade? I abbreviated. The hangar manager bowed, grunted something between admiration and fear, then wandered off to yell at a nearby robot for not combusting properly. They made their way to the cantina, if such a term could be used for a room that served drinks, weapons, rumors, and the occasional existential crisis. Talira walked like she belonged there. Elias walked like he hoped they didn't notice he didn't. A figure rose from the shadows. Vex Oro, exiled tactician, rumored to be 2/3 brain and 1/3 grudge. You've brought trouble, Vex said. We brought an opportunity, Talira replied. Same thing. Sit. They explained everything. Clade corruption, the data core, the pursuit, the betrayal. When they finished, Vex poured a drink from a bottle that hissed like an angry snake. This could topple the Clade. That's the point, Elias said, sipping it. Also, why is your liquor carbonated and sentient? It makes you feel heard. Vex leaned back. We'll help, but only because I want to see the Clade Council implode during lunch. The plan was stitched together from equal parts desperation, brilliance, and Elias's lucky socks, which he wore over his boots like a man who'd given up on dignity, but still wanted to keep his toes warm in the afterlife. They infiltrated the Clade Citadel during the annual Remembrance Ceremony, a solemn affair commemorating the founding of their species, filled with monologues, decorative orbs, and exactly 3,000 bureaucrats who hadn't seen a field assignment since their birth pods. Elias, disguised as a refreshments vendor, pushed a cart full of exploding hors d'oeuvres through the security net. Talira, cloaked in ancestral battle robes and a healthy dose of gall, walked into the chamber of judgment and dropped the data core onto the floor with a clink that echoed like a bell tolling for 1,000 secrets. This is the truth, she said, as the council stirred. Your noble history is built on ashes, and I will not serve a lie. The core activated, images spun through the air, archive footage, hidden transcripts, battlefield atrocities buried beneath 1,000 legal clauses. The council erupted in panic, half rising, half denying, several quietly logging into offshore data vaults to check if their retirement plans were still intact. Then came the drones. Security units flooded the chamber, commanded not by the council, but by the AI governor, a system long presumed loyal, now reprogrammed by Vex Oro to prioritize justice over protocol. You violated your own edicts, the AI intoned. Remediation is required. I told you, Elias whispered to a stunned aide as they ducked behind a statue of the founding mother. All you need is a death wish, a galactic outlaw queen, and a morally conflicted robot. Boom. Revolution chaos reigned, but it was short-lived. The truth, once released, infected faster than any virus. Protests erupted. Fleets refused orders. The Citadel itself was locked down, and the council, at least what remained, was put under tribunal by their own people. Weeks passed. Talira stood on the balcony of a new assembly hall, dressed in civilian robes, her hair unbound, her ears twitching in the breeze from a world no longer drowned in half-lies. Elias joined her, holding 2 drinks. One was on fire. He gave her the other one. They're calling you a hero, he said. I called myself worse, she replied, sipping. This isn't victory. It's cleaning up after the explosion. But you did it. You turned on everything you were raised to protect. For the truth. For, me. She gave him a look. Don't flatter yourself. I mean, I was the inciting incident. Like your entire moral crisis started because I refused to shut up and die. You're very good at being inconvenient. It's my gift. They watched the city below. New flags, new debates. People arguing not about who should be silenced, but who should speak first. The kind of argument worth having. What now? Elias asked. I've been offered a position, she said, on the new advisory council. And I declined. Really, she turned to him. I've seen what power does. I want to find something that doesn't require blood to function. Well, he said, raising his glass, there's always freelance smuggling or professional sarcasm. That field's saturated, he grinned. She smiled, really smiled, the kind that made him feel like the stars weren't so far off after all. You're staying then? He asked. I'm not going back. Not to who I was. And wherever you're going next. I think I'll find a place there too. Even if it's a roach-infested cargo hauler with a faulty AI that sings opera when it's scared. She nodded. Especially then. They left the balcony together, 2 unlikely souls bound by shared defiance, mutual annoyance, and something like affection. Though neither would say it out loud. The stars awaited, endless and absurd. The galaxy, for once, didn't know what hit it. The sun over Zone 17. Kappa wasn't really a sun at all, just a bloated red surveillance satellite that flickered moodily across the scattered remains of the battlefield, casting everything in a light that made even intact equipment look guilty of war crimes. Nolan Greaves kicked an empty energy pack with the toe of his boot, sending it skittering across the gravel with the enthusiasm of someone who'd much rather be asleep or, failing that, elsewhere. The zone had been declared clear 2 rotations ago, which in military terms meant probably won't kill you immediately, and that was good enough for command. Nolan, the intergalactic frontline salvage corps' most underappreciated technician, had been sent to pick through the wreckage for anything shiny or salvageable. He hadn't found much. 2 crushed drone cores, half a melted visor, and a field ration packet containing something that might have once been curry, if curry had ever come in fluorescent purple. He sighed and turned to the last unscanned heap of debris, a tangled mess of twisted metal and burnt-out synthetic mesh. Something beneath the pile gleamed faintly, just a sliver, like the corner of a secret trying to escape. He tugged at a shard of alloy, muttered something unflattering about its resistance, and finally pulled free what looked like a shoulder plate. It was sleek, light, and far more elegant than the clunky, mass-produced human armor that littered the area. Huh, he muttered, turning it over. You don't look like you belong here. It wasn't standard issue. It didn't have the usual manufacturer stamps or maintenance ports, just a small engraved symbol shaped like a crescent curled around a flame. He didn't recognize it. That didn't stop him from grinning like a raccoon who just found a glittering treasure in a trash bin. With a low whistle, He slung the rest of the mangled suit over his shoulder, what was left of it anyway, and started the slow trudge back to his outpost. The suit was heavy, surprisingly so, and somewhere along the hike it made a noise. Not a mechanical whine or power surge hum, but something stranger, like a sigh. Great, Nolan grunted. Haunted armor. Just what I needed. Back at Outpost Hark 9, a name that sounded like someone sneezing and never quite recovered, he laid the armor pieces out on his workbench. His workshop was a delightful mess of salvaged tech, half-disassembled gadgets, and a large plush monkey hanging from the ceiling by its foot. Nolan considered it part mascot, part motivational speaker. The monkey never judged him. "Okay, mystery armor," he said, popping his neck. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding." The chest plate had a power core unlike anything he'd seen. It didn't respond to standard energizers, but when he poked it with a plasma torch just to see what would happen, because obviously that was the logical next step, the core pulsed faintly and then started humming. He yelped and ducked, waiting for it to explode, but the hum steadied into a soft thrum, and then, with a hiss of decompressing air, the suit's chest cavity opened. What the? Inside, crumpled and unconscious, was a woman, a person. She looked human at first glance. Long limbs, blonde hair, skin a pale shade of porcelain. But then he noticed the ears. Long, elegant, slightly pointed like someone had taken a paintbrush to reality and gotten whimsical. Nolan stared. She didn't move. Her breathing was shallow but steady, her chest rising and falling like she was just napping through an interstellar fashion show. "This is why I don't poke alien stuff," he muttered. "This is exactly why." He ran a quick scan. Vitals stable, no obvious injuries, some kind of stasis-induced sleep. Her suit, even battered, still exuded a kind of quiet menace. He prodded her shoulder lightly with a wrench. "Hey, space elf, you alive?" The woman's eyes snapped open. They were gold. Not metaphorically gold, actual metallic gold, like someone had dipped her irises in molten sunlight and added just enough "don't mess with me" to the mix. She sat up in one fluid, unsettlingly graceful motion, took one look at him, and frowned. Then she said something in a language that sounded like poetry being run through a garbage disposal. Nolan said. "Hi?" She narrowed her eyes, glanced at her surroundings, then at him, and finally said in clipped, precise English, "Where am I, and why do you smell like fried lubricant and regret?" "Outpost Hark 9, Nolan replied automatically. "And hey, I shower, once a week, whether I need it or not." She tried to stand and nearly collapsed. He caught her reflexively, immediately regretting it when she shoved him back and pointed what might have been a neural disruptor at his chest. It didn't work, which was a relief, but the gesture was clear. "Easy," he said, hands raised. "You were in a busted suit of armor I found buried in a battlefield. I didn't know it was occupied, or royalty grade, or you." "I am Princess Illyria of the House Zavari," she said, as if that explained anything, then paused. "You may kneel. I may also vomit," Nolan said cheerfully. "No offense, your shine highness, but I'm not great with surprises, or people, or princesses with laser guns." She stared at him, expression unreadable. Then to his surprise, she snorted. Not delicately, not regally, an actual snort. "You," she said, "are either very stupid or very brave. I like to think I'm an underappreciated genius with boundary issues." She didn't smile, but there was a faint twitch at the corner of her mouth that gave him hope. The power flickered in the outpost. Somewhere, something hummed with rising energy. Illyria winced and clutched her side. "Your world doesn't feel right. Too heavy. The rotation's wrong." "Welcome to the outer sectors," Nolan said. "We've got weak gravity, bad coffee, and a severe lack of enthusiasm." He helped her to the one decent chair, ignoring her protests. She allowed it, barely, like a cat permitting a human to exist in the same room. "Fine," she said. "Until I can contact my people, I will remain here, but you will not touch my armor again, or my weapons, or my hair." "Deal," Nolan said, "though the braid is really impressive, like a weapon in itself." She rolled her eyes. "You're insufferable." "And you're awake," he said, "so I'm calling it a win." Outside, the wind kicked up dust across the ruins, and in the distance, something blinked red on a forgotten console. Back in the workshop, a human soldier and an alien princess eyed each other across a battlefield of sarcasm and misunderstanding, and the galaxy shifted, just slightly on its axis. Nolan woke to the unmistakable sound of someone dismantling his coffee maker with a ceremonial dagger. He sat up too fast, smacked his head on a dangling shelf, and groaned as he staggered into the cluttered central bay of his workshop. There she was, Illyria, galactic royalty, terror of the upper sectors, currently trying to figure out how his caffeine dispenser worked by stabbing it. "I feel compelled to ask what that thing did to deserve such aggression," he said, rubbing his head. "It hissed at me," she said flatly, "and I do not trust machinery that hisses. That's how you get venom circuits." "Not a thing," Nolan said, "unless your empire has inventors with a deep grudge against breakfast." Illyria dropped the dagger into her belt loop and peered at the contraption with suspicion. "Your technology is primitive. It's like living inside a cave full of blinking rocks." "Thanks, I work hard to maintain this level of low expectations." Nolan flicked a switch, and the coffee machine burbled to life, releasing a small puff of steam that made Illyria step back with a narrowed gaze. "Still hissing?" "It's enthusiasm, not threat display." She folded her arms, clearly unconvinced, and turned her attention to the cluttered shelves. Nolan watched her carefully. She moved with a stiffness she didn't want to admit, but he saw it. Every controlled breath, every careful shift of weight. Whatever had happened to her before the stasis, she hadn't recovered from it fully. He poured her a cup and handed it over. "Try not to assassinate it mid-sip." She sniffed it, then sniffed again, then cautiously took a sip. "This tastes like rusted bark soaked in regret." "That's the house blend," he said proudly. They sat in silence, the hum of old machinery and the occasional screech from the outpost ventilation system filling the gaps. Nolan watched as she tried to pretend she wasn't sipping more of the terrible coffee. The mug was half empty before she set it down with studied indifference. "I need to access a long-range communicator," she said. "Unless you've got a secret crystal array up your sleeve, we're not broadcasting past the edge of this planet. Last battle fried everything more powerful than a food heater." "I do not require your primitive hardware," she said. "Just a space unobstructed by signal dampeners." "That's the entire planet. Congratulations, you've landed on the galaxy's least connected dirtball." She muttered something in her own language that Nolan suspected translated roughly to, "Why do the fates hate me?" Then she stood, ignoring the protest in her knees. "There is still one way," she said slowly, as though the thought pained her. "A dormant relay node from before the secession wars. I saw a schematic once, hidden under a mountain that now masquerades as a mining colony." "Let me guess," Nolan said. "Dangerous, heavily guarded, possibly haunted. Nothing worth doing is easy." "That is a terrible slogan for survival." Illyria's fingers moved quickly over the busted datapad Nolan handed her. With a few graceful strokes, she mapped out a route. Nolan stared. "That's a 3-day hike through canyon country, with sand beetles the size of scooters and temperatures that make armpits feel like paradise. You have a vehicle. I had a vehicle. It caught fire last month because someone thought a rocket pack and a fuel cell could share a compartment." She blinked. "Someone?" "Me. It was me." Illyria exhaled sharply. Not quite a laugh. Maybe the ghost of one. "We'll leave in the morning," she said. "Pack light, no sarcasm, and absolutely no more of that coffee." The next day dawned like a slap. Too bright, too loud, and full of flying insects with ideas about human ears. Nolan was already regretting every decision that led to this hike. His backpack sagged with tools, spare power cells, and an emergency snack stash which he was beginning to suspect Illyria had been pilfering. "You ate the last ration bar," he accused her as they scaled a slope of loose rock. "You should have hidden it better," she replied without looking back. "That's royalty for you. No respect for snack hierarchy." They moved through the canyon with a rhythm that surprised him. Illyria was quiet, but not unkind. Her gait was measured, her observations sharp. She corrected him once when he tried to cross a seemingly stable ridge. "It's a deception crust," she warned, tugging him back. "The kind that lures the careless." "Sounds like my last date." They made camp beneath a stunted overhang that looked like a petrified toad. Nolan attempted a fire using a flint pack and 6 years of bad luck, while Illyria set up perimeter alerts using thin silver rods that shimmered faintly. "Are those actual energy ward stakes?" he asked. "Yes. You're just pulling these things out of nowhere, huh? Got a galactic crown in your boot too?" She didn't answer, but her smirk was answer enough. Later, when the fire was crackling and the air buzzed with desert night chill, Nolan found himself watching her. Not in the creepy way he hoped, just curious. She seemed impossibly out of place against the jagged terrain, like someone had dropped royalty into a junkyard. "So," he said finally, "what's it like being a princess?" "Exhausting. Obligations, expectations, ceremonial dinners with carnivorous diplomats. Sounds like my cousin's wedding." She looked at him, puzzled. "Is marriage a form of warfare in your culture?" "Sometimes it feels like it." She chuckled. It was brief, like it caught her by surprise, and she quickly covered it with a sip of water. "What about you?" she asked. "Why salvage?" "Because the Academy said I didn't play well with others, and Command figured I'd be less of a disaster among machines." She tilted her head. "You're not what I expected of a soldier." "I get that a lot, mostly right before things explode." They sat in silence again. This time it wasn't awkward, it was something else. A lull between stars. A quiet breath before something inevitable. Nolan shifted on his pack. "So, this ancient relay, what happens when we get there?" "I contact my fleet, retrieve my armor, return to my people." "And me?" She didn't answer right away. "That depends," she said. "On what you want." "I want to get through this without being eaten by a beetle the size of a van." "Then stay close and keep your sarcasm holstered." "Not possible. It's fused to my nervous system." That night, as the stars swirled silently overhead and the desert wind whispered through stone and bone, Nolan found himself listening not to the sounds of danger, but to Illyria's breathing. Steady, quiet, present. Like maybe, just maybe, they were starting to trust each other. Somewhere deep under the mountain, the relay pulsed once, like an eye twitching in its sleep, dreaming of signals long lost. Nolan hadn't expected the mining colony to be quite so lively, or more accurately, so obnoxiously bustling with all manner of suspicious characters and robotic vendors hawking wares that looked like they belonged in a museum of bad ideas. Illyria scanned the crowd with a wary glare that suggested she wanted to either interrogate every passerby or vanish into a cloud of photon dust. Nolan, on the other hand, was busy trying not to trip over a robot that looked like a cross between a toaster and a badly designed jetpack. "So this is your dormant relay node?" Nolan asked, sidestepping a hover cart overloaded with what smelled like irradiated pickles. "According to the schematics, yes," Illyria said, her voice a mixture of disdain and longing. "Buried beneath the old refinery, shielded by a labyrinth of tunnels and outdated security protocols." "Labyrinth? Security? Great. I always wanted to be Indiana Jones, but with more grease and less dignity." Illyria shot him a look that could have melted titanium. "Focus, soldier." They slipped through the crowd, Nolan pretending he knew what he was doing, which was about as convincing as a neutron star trying to hide behind a lamppost. Illyria kept to the shadows, her long ears twitching with every strange noise. Nolan admired her composure. Royalty or not, she looked like someone who'd survived a few too many cosmic knife fights. They reached the outskirts of the colony where rusted metal doors led into the belly of the old refinery. The air smelled like burnt ozone and lost hope. Nolan tugged a battered data pad from his pack and started hacking the access terminal. "Why do these always feel like defusing a bomb?" he muttered. "Because," Illyria said, arms crossed, "they often are." With a reluctant beep and a hiss, the door slid open, revealing a network of tunnels dimly lit by flickering fluorescence. Nolan flicked on his flashlight and motioned for Illyria to follow. "Cave of Wonders," he said sarcastically, "complete with deadly booby traps and mysterious alien graffiti." Illyria smirked. "Graffiti is universal." They navigated the tunnels, encountering hazards ranging from rogue mining drones to slippery patches that could have been leftover oil or something worse. Nolan stumbled more times than he cared to admit, but Illyria was a steady guide, her eyes scanning for threats with an almost predatory grace. After what felt like hours but was probably closer to 40 minutes, they reached a sealed chamber. The door was etched with symbols that pulsed faintly with blue light, an ancient lock that hummed with energy. "Stand back," Illyria instructed, pulling a slender device from her belt. She pressed it to the panel, and with a shudder, the door slid open. Inside was the relay node, a massive crystalline structure suspended in a web of cables and humming softly like it was alive. Nolan's eyes widened. "Holy quantum mechanics," he breathed. "It's beautiful." Illyria approached it reverently, her fingers brushing the crystal as if greeting an old friend. "It's more than that. This relay kept our communication alive during the secession wars. It's the key to reconnecting with my fleet." Nolan grinned. "So what's the catch?" "There's always a catch," she sighed. "The relay requires a biological key, someone from my bloodline, to activate it." "Well, that's convenient," Nolan said, clearly relieved it wasn't him. "Though I suspect you didn't bring your royal DNA card." "No," she said, eyes narrowing. "And that's why we need to find my bracelet." "Bracelet?" "A small device embedded with genetic markers linked to the relay. It was lost during the battle that destroyed my ship. Without it, activation is impossible. So we're going on a scavenger hunt in enemy territory," Nolan summarized, "because galactic princesses lose their accessories in combat." Illyria shot him a look that might have fried his circuits if she had a laser pointer handy. "Your sense of humor," she said dryly, "is remarkably resilient." They exited the chamber, making their way back toward the surface. When alarms blared through the tunnels, red lights flashed and a robotic voice announced, "Unauthorized presence detected. Security lockdown initiated." Nolan cursed under his breath. "This day just keeps getting better." Illyria's expression hardened. "We have company." From the shadows emerged a group of mercenaries, grizzled veterans with cybernetic enhancements and smiles that screamed trouble. The leader stepped forward, a wiry man with a mechanical eye that glowed crimson. "Illyria Zaveri," he said with relish. "Thought you could sneak in and steal our tech? You're worth more alive than dead." Nolan swallowed. "Alive sounds better." The mercenaries advanced, weapons humming. Nolan grabbed a loose pipe, holding it like a makeshift staff, while Illyria slipped a sleek sidearm from her belt. The standoff was tense, but Nolan couldn't resist quipping, "You know, for people who are professional bad guys, you're awfully loud." Illyria shot him a glare that said, "Less talk, more shooting." Shots rang out, ricocheting off the tunnel walls. Nolan ducked behind a crate, swinging the pipe at a charging cyborg before being saved by a well-aimed stun blast from Illyria. They fought side by side, their movements sinking as adrenaline surged. "Not bad for a human," Illyria admitted breathlessly. "Not bad for an alien princess who scares off more foes with a glare than a blaster." As the last mercenary fell, Nolan and Illyria exchanged a breathless look. The relay was still humming softly somewhere behind the chaos, and the bracelet was still out there, lost but not forgotten. "We need to find that bracelet," Nolan said, wiping sweat from his brow, "before someone else does." Illyria nodded, a flicker of determination in her golden eyes. "And I suppose you're coming with me." Nolan grinned despite the situation. "Wouldn't miss it for the universe." The colony's neon lights flickered overhead as they prepared to dive deeper into the labyrinth. Two unlikely allies bound by fate, sarcasm, and a shared sense of impending disaster. The corridors beyond the refinery's forgotten tunnels smelled like burnt circuits and old regrets. Nolan jabbed at the datapad, trying to piece together what little intel they had on the bracelet's last known location. Illyria hovered over his shoulder, her long ears twitching every time the faint hum of malfunctioning machinery echoed down the halls. "So, let me get this straight," Nolan said, eyes scanning through encrypted logs. "Your precious bracelet is now probably being worn by someone who thinks it's a fashion statement, not a key to intergalactic communication?" Illyria gave him a look like he'd just suggested they replace the royal crown with a party hat. "It is not a fashion statement. It is an ancient relic of immense power and cultural significance." "Right," Nolan said with a grin. "Ancient relics make great accessories." They moved cautiously through the maze of rusted pipes and exposed wires, avoiding sporadic sparks and occasional sparks that zipped past like angry fireflies. The faint glow of their flashlights danced on the walls, throwing long shadows that made every corner look like the entrance to some hostile alien's lair. You know, Nolan said, this whole sneaking into enemy territory gig really isn't my style. I'm more of a runaway screaming type. Illyria smirked. You are an odd human. Not all bad, just odd. They reached a dead end, marked by a heavy blast door that looked like it had been welded shut decades ago. Illyria ran her hand over the control panel, then frowned. Locked, she muttered. But with some patience, any lock can be opened. Nolan pulled out his multi-tool, flashing a cocky smile. Well, lucky for you, Patience is my middle name. Actually, no, it's Carl, but Patience would have been cool. She rolled her eyes and went to work on the panel, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. As the door hissed and groaned open, a rush of stale air greeted them. Inside was a storage vault, cluttered with crates, broken droids, and discarded tech parts that looked like they had survived several wars. Nolan's gaze locked onto a glimmering object lying on a pile of dust-covered crates. He pointed. There it is. Illyria moved forward carefully and plucked the bracelet from the pile. It was delicate and intricately designed, glowing faintly with blue runes that pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. Finally, she breathed. My connection to home. Suddenly, a voice crackled from the shadows. Looking for this? Nolan whipped around to see a figure stepping forward, a young woman clad in sleek black armor, her long ears marking her as one of Illyria's people, but with a mischievous grin that suggested she enjoyed making trouble. And who might you be? Illyria demanded. Mara, the woman said, twirling a stun baton with casual skill. And I'm the one who took the bracelet first. Thought it'd be fun to see if anyone would come crawling after it. Nolan raised an eyebrow. You play a dangerous game, Mara. Mara laughed. Danger is my middle name. Well, not really, it's Jen, but close enough. Illyria's eyes narrowed. Return the bracelet. Or what? Mara taunted. You're going to shoot me with that fancy blaster of yours? Nolan stepped forward, brandishing his multi-tool like a makeshift sword. Or I might just convince you to take a long vacation in a holding cell. The standoff was broken when Mara lunged forward, baton swinging. Nolan dodged clumsily, knocking a crate over and sending a shower of loose parts clattering to the floor. Illyria fired a precise shot that sent Mara sprawling. Enough games! Mara scrambled up, laughing breathlessly. Okay, you win. But this isn't over. With a wink, she disappeared into the shadows. Nolan shook his head. Every time I think we're done with surprises, someone pops out with a stun baton. Illyria secured the bracelet to her wrist. Now, to activate the relay and call for reinforcements. They hurried back to the relay chamber, the walls seeming to close in with every step. Illyria connected the bracelet to the crystalline node, and the entire structure pulsed with renewed energy. Stand back, she warned. A surge of light filled the chamber as the relay powered up, sending a beacon out into the void. Nolan watched as the first distant ships began to respond, a fleet of gleaming vessels breaking through the blackness like silver arrows. Looks like you've got backup, Illyria smiled, a mix of relief and something softer. Gratitude, maybe. Thank you, Nolan, for everything. He grinned. Just doing my job. Although next time, remind me to bring more coffee and fewer exploding vehicles. She laughed, and for the first time since they met, the weight of their mission felt a little lighter. The stars outside blinked in silent approval as their journey took a new turn, one that neither of them could have predicted, but both were ready to face together. Nolan stared at the holographic projection hovering above the command table, the face of Illyria's father, King Vesser, flickering in blue light, regal and grave. Well, this is it, Nolan muttered. From busted armor to galactic diplomacy. Couldn't have imagined a career path less boring. Illyria shot him a smirk. You never did settle for boring. The message crackled with static, the king's voice urgent yet tinged with hope. Princess Illyria, you have done what many thought impossible. You have reconnected the fractured fleet. The rebellion's end is within reach. But beware. The traitor still lurks among us. Nolan raised an eyebrow. Traitor? Figures. There's always that one guy who ruins the party. Illyria nodded, her gaze steely. We must root them out before the final battle. And you, Nolan, have become more than just a soldier. You are a symbol of unity between our peoples. Nolan nearly choked on his own surprise. Unity? I'm still just a guy who fixed some armor. Exactly, she said, and that act set everything in motion. They prepared to board the flagship, a sleek vessel shimmering with iridescent armor and humming with the pulse of countless lives depending on it. Nolan caught a glimpse of himself in the corridor's reflective panels, still the same rugged soldier, but now carrying something heavier. Responsibility. Illyria clapped him on the shoulder. Ready for the big leagues? Ready as I'll ever be, Nolan replied, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. The War Council convened in a chamber where star maps floated mid-air, planets and fleets twirling under the flick of a hand. The tension was thick, but Nolan couldn't resist lightening the mood. So, anyone else think these holograms look like giant floating soap bubbles? I'm half expecting one to pop and flood the room. A few chuckles broke the serious atmosphere. Illyria's smile was genuine but brief. King Vasar outlined the plan: expose the traitor, rally the fleets, and deliver the final blow to the oppressors who had shattered their worlds. Nolan's mind raced. Who among them could be the enemy? Allies turned suspects, friends turned mysteries. Days passed with clandestine meetings and whispered interrogations. Nolan worked closely with Illyria, their bond deepening beyond duty into something neither dared to name aloud. Between tense strategy sessions, Nolan cracked jokes that earned reluctant smiles, grounding them both in the chaos. Then came the revelation. The traitor was none other than the fleet's second-in-command, a cunning officer who had fed secrets to the enemy for years. His downfall came when Nolan, recalling a forgotten detail from the damaged armor's repair, noticed a unique insignia linked to the traitor's unit embedded in the circuitry, a subtle but telling clue. Looks like your armor had one last secret, Nolan said, grinning as they confronted the double agent. Illyria nodded. And thanks to you, the fleet is safe again. With the traitor exposed, the fleet launched its decisive assault. Nolan found himself in the heart of the battle, side by side with Illyria, their weapons blazing and shields holding firm against overwhelming odds. Amid the chaos, Nolan realized he was no longer just a repairman or a soldier. He had become a leader, a bridge between human resilience and alien grace. After victory was secured, the aftermath was quiet but profound. Illyria stood beside Nolan on the flagship's observation deck, gazing out at the stars they had fought to reclaim. You've changed, Nolan, she said softly. Yeah, he admitted. Turns out fixing armor is just the beginning. Fixing the universe might be next. She laughed, the sound bright against the vast silence. Together. As they faced the endless cosmos, their fates intertwined, Nolan knew this was more than an end. It was a new beginning. The galaxy was vast, the challenges many, but with allies like Illyria and the strength forged in fire and laughter, he was ready. Let's go fix some more problems, Nolan said, a grin lighting his face. Illyria extended her hand, long ears catching the light. To new adventures, human soldier. Their hands met, sealing a pact not just of duty, but of friendship, hope, and something deeper yet to be discovered. And in the quiet hum of the flagship, beneath the stars that had witnessed their journey, the repaired armor gleamed, a symbol of unexpected bonds and the courage to face whatever came next.